Go.
So hello everyone and welcome this wonderful Tuesday. So glad to be in community with you today for this wonderful intergenerational conversation, which is in celebration of International Women's Day and Women's History Month. We're delighted to work with the Gender Equity Network to bring this conversation to life. And so in case we haven't met before, my name is Claire Byrne. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Senior Community Manager for RSA US. I'm joining you today from the Cowichan Valley on the traditional lands and unceded territory of the Coetbh people on Vancouver Island. So, as folks are joining us, we'd love to hear from you in the chat, get a sense of who's in the Zoom virtual rooms, as they say. Feel free to introduce yourself, share your name, pronouns if you'd like, and where you're joining us from. We also like to start our gatherings with, we call them a connection prompt, which is just a wonderful way to kind of ground us in the topic, get to know each other a little bit better, kind of switch off our brains from what we've just come from and what we're kind of settling into for this conversation. And with that, I think Tony might be popping it in the chat. So I was very on it with these things. It's probably way ahead of me. So what is one word you associate with sustainability? And absolutely no rush. It's totally fine if you need to take a minute and think about it. So while you're doing that, I'll give everybody here a little bit of a background on RSA US, cover some kind of ground rules about how we want to show up for today's event. And for those of you who are new to the RSA, a little bit about us and our work in the world, and especially RSA US as well, for folks who maybe don't know that we exist sometimes. And here we are, and we're doing some cool stuff. Um, and so the RSA itself is a global civic membership organization that unites people and ideas to solve the challenges of our time. And our roots trace back to Enlightenment era coffeehouse culture, where people gathered to exchange ideas, challenge the status quo, and imagine new possibilities. Since then, our work has continually evolved to meet the needs of each era and support progress across industries, sectors, and communities. And in the US, we're a 501(c)(3) affiliate of the RSA, so we're a social change organization founded in London on the belief that private citizens can come together to improve society. And we leverage our 270-year-old history rooted in creativity, connection, and innovation while staying nimble and entrepreneurial in our approach. And you may see our faces just up there that our team is small, but we are mighty, as we like to say. So it's myself, Alexa, Tony, and Emily. And we leverage the best of our lineage, like 270-year-old lineage, and engage almost about 1,300 fellows across the US to mobilize change through collaboration, shared learning, and relationships. And what we do, and then I will take a beat and pass over to Tony. What we do as a nonpartisan membership organization is we use our convening power, which RSA is really well known for, and our global connections to identify what's needed right now and uplift people across the people driving progress essentially, and support those change makers. So through gatherings, through partnerships, through local initiatives, so we connect those big ideas to real world impact, bridging across sectors, and to address the most urgent challenges that we find ourselves grappling with in society today. And our role as a convener and connector really brings together people from vastly different backgrounds and fields to create unlikely partnerships, unlikely friendships, and unlocked our shared purpose to create solutions for impact. So that's enough from me, but just to kind of place you as who we are, what we do, I'm going to take a beat and pass over to Tony to just talk through some of our norms for today. So over to you, Tony.
Thanks so much, Claire. And I love seeing folks putting into the chat the things that feel like the word that comes up when you think of sustainability. Lots of diversity there. Lots of things that seem to be very connected with the work that each of us are doing in different ways. Hi, I'm Tony Showala. My pronouns are she and her. I'm the Senior Connection, Culture, and Operations Lead at RSA US. And have been really involved in our social connections work, which has been absolutely incredible. If that's a space you're interested in, don't hesitate to reach out. Please let me know. We'll share our contact information a bit better or a bit later. In addition to intentionally curating the content of RSA events, we're always aspiring to show up in ways that will facilitate inclusive, safe, authentic, collaborative, respectful, and kind places that promote learning and support our shared purpose of creating social impact. So to solidify this, listed on the screen, we have a series of ways that we are committed to showing up. So please take a moment to scan them. Make sure that you are in agreement with caring for ourselves and one another in these ways. And if needs be, you can always reach out to me via the chat. And if you want to put any thoughts or ideas around these are something that we're continuously refining based on interactions we have, and making sure that they reflect our values and the ways that we show up. So with that, I think I'll let Claire be done taking a break and send it back to her to start getting us started, I guess.
Yeah. The caffeine is kicking in. You'll be happy to hear. So I just wanted to introduce our wonderful moderator for today, who's also our Gender Equity Network co-lead, Jessica. So Jessica is one of the 30,000 fellows spread out around the globe. Is based in the US. We've about shy of like 1,300 fellows here distributed across the US. And Dr. Jessica Aviva is moderating this conversation today, brings like a wealth of experience, skills, expertise, joy to this conversation. So a little bit about Jessica, that she is a writer, a researcher, an educator and social change practitioner who leads the Fruition Coalition, a social enterprise that creates flourishing organizations and communities through education, publications, and partnerships that mobilize and connect people, ideas, and resources, integrate research, intuition, I love that, experience and dreams, and results in meaningful, sustainable change. In that role, she convenes and facilitates the Club Fruition, a collaborative online space where feminist leaders connect, learn strategies to create change in organizations and communities, and mobilize to enact bold visions for a flourishing world where everyone feels safe, welcomed, and fulfilled. Her dissertation focused on how women leaders in social movement organizations engage similarities and differences as they construct and experience solidarity. She's the author of 17 books. Whew, I'm just going to take a moment to appreciate that. 17. Wow. Including The Joy of Feminist Leadership, Connection and Creativity for Peacekeepers, Bridge Builders, Communal Weavers, and Cosmic Healers. Her work has encompassed more than 25 years in community-based organizations, 14 years in academia, and 6 years in local government. And she's earned degrees in organizational leadership, nonprofit management, sociology, and marketing. And she currently works with several community-based organizations in the US as a consultant and volunteer. And we are very lucky to have her as our Gender Equity Network co-lead. So I'll take a break and pass you over to wonderful Jessica and to kick us off. Thank you so much. Oh, you're muted. Sorry. It's okay. It always happens.
Thank you so much for letting me know about that. And thank you, Claire and Tony, for getting us started today and for making everyone feel so welcome, as you always do. And I'm so excited to be here today with our panelists who bring a wealth of knowledge and experience. And I'm so excited to hear what they have to say and learn from them and take some of the things that they share with us and put them into action. So I'd like to just briefly introduce each of our speakers before we get into our conversation. Kanika Joshi is the founder of Impact Circle. It's the world's first AI-powered Tinder-style partnership matching platform that connects partners in the development sector to accelerate progress towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And she is based in London. Katie Allen is an organic farmer and knitwear designer based in Great Cotmarsh Farm in Wiltshire. Her Fashion as a Force for Nature workshop is teaching the next generation of designers about the importance of natural materials and circular fashion. Maya D'Souza is co-founder of Materia Verde and a director of programs at Act for Goa. She is also a consultant focused on circular economy and climate policy and practice, as well as business practice and transformation. And Lesley-Anne Long is the chief strategist at Wonderfuture, an organization focused on global digital health, climate, and democracy. Her work encompasses global health, digital technology, international development, higher ed, democracy, and governance. And they're all very kind and wonderful people. And thank you so much for being here. If you'd like to learn more about our panelists or connect with them on social media, all of their information is in the chat, and you can just click on the links and take a look at their websites and their LinkedIn and get to know them a little bit better and follow up with them after today's conversation. And from there, I would like to start our conversation. We have 3 questions, and we're going to go through them one at a time, and our panelists will have the opportunity to respond. And if you have questions as we're talking, just feel free to pop those in the chat, and then we will take questions and give the panelists the opportunity to respond to those after our brief conversation. So my first question is, we're going to start with Kanika. And my first question is, reflecting on your life and work, what key experiences have shaped your understanding of women's role in advancing sustainability?
Thanks for the brilliant question. Glad that I'm here with such great company as well. I think my reflections will be both personal and professional. Personal first. I do think that coming from India, growing, like having roots in Uttarakhand, where the biggest environmental movement in 1970 called Chipko movement happened, where women actually hugged trees to ensure that deforestation doesn't happen in their village. That's basically the roots of my family. And it's impressive for me because even at a time when women were not known as climate leaders, women were climate leaders. So that's pretty much, I think, the grounding which humbles me into going into the sustainability space. And then I think my reflection more professionally as a data geek is that even at a time in like 2026, we see that most of the food that's grown in the world, approximately like 50 to 60% of it comes because of women who are across the food supply chain. So right from farming to production to distribution, it's a staggering number. However, when we look at the kind of climate finance and sustainability finance that funds women, it's less than 10%. So these are mostly like stats from FAO and UN. And I do think that it's basically that gap in the intent and the finance versus the people who are putting in most amount of work in the sustainability space that really like grounds my experience in terms of where I feel women's role should be in sustainability. I do think that women's roles should be recognized a lot further and should be invested in a lot more, and that's why I work in this space. So that's my initial reflections, and looking forward to hear from fellow panelists as well.
Thank you so much. Maya, tell us about some of your key experiences.
Yeah, well, thanks very much, Jessica. And it's interesting to follow Kanika as well, because I'm living in India at the moment. But in fact, I spent a lot of my life in the UK, but I grew up in Kenya. And probably a little bit like Kanika, I was influenced very much by my very early fairly early childhood. So when I was around 7 or 8, sort of seeing things like drought and people actually, pretty much starving and animals starving and that sort of thing. That's why I put down in the chat, when I think about sustainability, I do think about just having enough food to eat, because when you have things like, just very vulnerable environments like you do in sub-Saharan Africa, you do really feel a lot of the pain. And so that made me really feel that one has to do something. You can't sort of just do nothing. It's such a painful situation. And as time moved on, it became even more apparent that we have really a lot of different pressing problems, whether it's climate or pollution or other forms of degradation. And in terms of why about women being part of this, I mean, first of all, my feeling was that everybody needs to step up, men or women, but that does mean that women who may feel that they want to hide away a little bit and like really focus in on their families or something of that sort, it felt to me as if one shouldn't or you can't afford to do that, because the world is so much in need of people taking responsibility and taking action. I mean, I saw even well, I shouldn't say even in Kenya, but in Kenya, so many women who were bold and courageous. We have people like Wangari Maathai, who's very well known around the world for her reforestation efforts. And she was also in politics and sometimes was given a very hard time, but she still had that sort of courage. There are other women who were also involved in various movements, and some of them were a little bit invisible, I'd say. It wasn't really obvious who it was who was involved in when you look at the women. The men were perhaps more vocal and better known. But what I felt is that a lot of people, they didn't sort of say, I'm not, the right race or the right class or whatever. They just jumped into the sort of fray and started taking action. So that included somebody who I know who was actually Canadian, but married to a Kenyan, and she was a very influential person running a sort of environmental magazine for children, which influenced a lot of us, and very many others. But then later on, when I came to live in the UK, I saw a lot of women who were, again, willing to be sort of firsts and really take a lead. So I did get involved in the Green Party, although I was a civil servant. I was a Green Party sort of a member and a councillor in London, even when there were very few of us. There was a time when I think there was only 3 of us in the whole of London. Now there's so many. In those days, it was only councillors. We got our 1 MP, which was Caroline Lucas. But, Sarah Parkin in the Green Party, Caroline Lucas, people like Natalie Bennett and Sian Berry, who's still very much involved, and I know Natalie and Sian in particular very well, but they are brave, ready to lead, and they don't shy away from things like technology and all of that. There's no sort of, they managed to get over some of the gendered stuff that we see. I mean, in India, when you look at the figures, it doesn't look as if women are doing particularly well in terms of leadership. But in fact, there's a lot of amazing women here who are very well known, just as, so say, someone like Indira J. Singh, who I recently heard speak as a lawyer, human rights lawyer, environmental lawyer. But I don't think people would even say, she's just an influential person. She, in fact, doesn't like always to be seen as a woman lawyer, but as an influential person herself. And another person I wanted to mention was Vandana Shiva, because she is also somebody who is known globally for her work on ecofeminism and thinking through how patriarchal systems actually can also be or are also very destructive in terms of nature, that lack of respect of nature. And I'm going to stop on that note, but my feeling is that women have more of respect for nature, and I don't want to generalize in this way, but I think the sort of feeling that you do have to ensure that you protect this fragile world, whether it's for food or beauty or herbal medicines or whatever. There are a lot of women around the world who've traditionally been responsible for that sort of thing. I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Katie, tell us about some of your key experiences that have influenced the way you think about women's role in sustainability.
Yeah, so I work in 2 sort of very different worlds. So I have sort of one foot in farming and the other foot in fashion. And farming is obviously quite a male-dominated industry, which presents its own challenges. But there are, change is slow, but it is happening, and there are some, really sort of pioneering women, particularly working within sustainability, I would say, in farming. And like Helen Browning, chief executive of the Soil Association, is a perfect example. But I would say it's in my work within fashion where I've really seen some of the unique attributes that women bring to working towards sustainability sort of really like come to life, and particularly within the Fibre Shed movement. I don't know if people have heard of Fibre Shed. You can look it up. We can put the link in the chat. But I am a member of Southwest England Fibre Shed, and it's a global organisation, and it's about creating textiles within a bioregion. And it's very community minded, and the vast majority of the members of our Fibre Shed are women, whether they're farmers or designers or growers or people working at running the mills and things like that. And it's that sort of coming together and collaboration and supporting each other and communication that I feel really comes alive when you've got groups of women working together. I think we have far more of a natural instinct for empathy and communication, and generally, are more nurturing. And I think those are key attributes which are needed now to protect the planet.
Thank you so much. Lesley-Anne, tell us about some of your key experiences.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. And just to say, it's really fascinating hearing my three colleagues here talking about their experiences and definitions for them around sustainability. And I was thinking back, I've worked in international development, primarily in global health for the last 20 years. And one experience that really shaped my thinking about sustainability was when I was working in Ethiopia with Dr. Tedros, who at that time was the Minister of Health. And I worked with him and his team and about 50 Ethiopian health experts, many of whom were women, to develop the training program for their frontline health workers. And what struck me that was so interesting about this was the entire model depended on women, tens of thousands of women working at community level. And so they were the people connecting national policy to everyday life, supporting maternal health, newborn child health, sanitation, and sort of basic care in villages across the country. And I think what it made me realize then, and I've thought so much about throughout my career, is that sustainability is often about social infrastructure as well as about policy and governance. And that quite often that infrastructure is through women at community levels. And I think, Kanika, you alluded to that around women sort of, being 50 years ago, thinking about the environment and deforestation. And I've seen that pattern of social infrastructure and women leading that when convening global dialogues around health, around technology, and now working in democracy. And so I think when women are included, not just as kind of participants, but they're actually part of convening, designing processes, there's something in the conversation that sometimes shifts. And I think, Katie, you were somewhat alluding to that, the different kind of skills that women bring to a conversation. And I think they are more collaborative, they think more long term. And I think they're more attentive often to the real lives that people are experiencing, which are sometimes disconnected from the policy thinking that goes on at government and think tank levels. So I'll stop there with that example.
Thank you so much, Lesley-Anne. For our next question, we'll start with Katie. How do you imagine women working collaboratively across generations and other differences to facilitate economic, environmental, and social sustainability into the future?
As I said before, I think most women naturally work collaboratively, and it's in our nature. But I think having the sort of infrastructure to support that sort of organic connection is really important. And I think it's something that we've lost. I think society's become quite disjointed. I don't think communities come together as much as they used to. And I think that sort of we've lost that ability within our communities to interact and talk and share and support and things like that. When I first started working many years ago, I ran a small graphic design business, and that's what I sort of first did when I left school. And I was based in the countryside, and I was a member of an organisation called WIRE, which stands for Women in Rural Enterprise. And it was a networking organisation specifically for women running businesses in rural areas. And it was absolutely amazing. And we had these regular networking events in our region, but then there was a national conference every year. And I remember I went to one, and the buzz and the energy in this room of sort of 500 or 600 women was just incredible. There was so much positivity, so much togetherness, support, understanding, and everybody left feeling empowered. And I think that's what happens when women come together, but, particularly when they come together in a space where they don't feel judged and they feel safe. And I think those environments that are there for women is is really sort of fundamental and an important part of that. You know, that unfortunately doesn't exist anymore. They lost their funding, but we do in the UK, we do have the WI, which is the largest women's organisation in the UK, and it was founded in something like 1915. And they actually do quite a lot of campaigns to tackle real issues that matter in our communities. And I'm not a member of a WI, and it's something that I've always sort of thought about joining and doing. And then I saw on our community Facebook group post recently that Royal Wootton Bassett, which is my nearest town, are looking at setting up a WI. And they held a meeting at the rugby club and invited all the women that were interested in joining to come along. And they had so many women turn up that they're actually looking at setting up 4 groups within one town. And, you know, to me, that just showed the thirst that women have to network together, to connect, to do something, to make change, to be heard and be involved. And yeah, I think that's key. I think that's giving women the opportunity to network and come together.
Thank you so much. Maya, tell us about some of your thoughts related to collaboration.
Yeah, now it's a very interesting question about, you know, how do we sort of support this collaboration? How do we collaborate? Because everyone talks a lot about the importance of collaboration, but it's not always as easy as all that. I mean, there's so many different, I work in an organisation which is in effect a bit like a collective act for Goa. There's a few of us who are running it. It's not always easy to do that. But what I'm going to just begin with was that point that Katie made about organic connections. So one of the things that we do in Act for Goa is more around placemaking and planning. Planning is a key part of it. And we had an event with another organisation last week, which made me think about this, because I was talking to, so we went to a little island and we're thinking about, you know, what would sustainable tourism look like here? But I had some interesting conversations. There was a young man saying that in the old days, his mother and his aunt and all the women, they used to go on a passenger ferry to the town instead of getting in a car and driving or a bus, and they would sit there and they would knit and have their, you know, maybe they had their coffee, I'm not sure. And it would be a bit of a journey and they would talk a lot and sort of, you know, you can just imagine how sort of enriching that would be, how they had that time to talk through ideas. So I do feel that there's a lot of different ways in which different sort of spaces, venues, structures that we need for women to work together. And some are just those informal spaces which do build sort of social capital. You begin to know each other, trust each other. So on one level, you simply have to have that sort of knowing and trusting. You know, sometimes things can become, even if they're groups of women, we often say women, I think women are good at working with each other, but there can still be friction and tension. So we do need to think about those sort of ways of organising and convening so that everybody has a voice, if it's women and men and young people and older people, or even different class and caste, if you want to say that. Also, that can be an issue. Not everybody feels as invited to speak. So thought through ways of convening so that everybody is given a voice, I would say that is important. But other forms of collaboration, I'd say, are sort of really setting up groups and organisations to work on particular issues and projects. It is important that, you know, women do step up, take the lead. It's not always easy, take responsibility. And of course, many women do. And where I am now in India, I'd say that still, probably if there's a man in a room and a woman in a room, everybody would want to listen to the man. You know, there's still a little bit, the women have to be, you know, speak more, somehow or other manage to work out a way of getting heard. So I think women also to collaborate have to think very carefully how to work together, how to organise. You know, EQ and getting on is good, but you also have to be things like, you know, project manager. You have to make sure your group stays on and exists and continues to have impact. So that's my thoughts about collaboration. It's never easy. I mean, I've done a lot of convening. So I worked in Hong Kong. It was groups of businesses, more in the Green Party with community groups, now different groups here in India. But it is so important. It does require a lot of reflection and continuously trying to be sort of inclusive, but not spending so much time being inclusive that you're not, just getting on. You have to get on with things as well.
Thank you so much. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you finished?
No, I'm done.
Oh, okay, thank you. Lesley-Anne, tell us about some of your ideas about collaboration across the generations and other differences.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. And I think Maya and Katie have covered some of the points I was going to make about that kind of networking and connections and building bridges, pathways, and so on, that sort of collaborative style of leadership, which is very much against the trend of the strongman leadership that we're seeing increasingly around the world at the moment. So let me give you one kind of tangible example that I have had the opportunity to see over the last couple of years. And that's an advisory board that I'm on for University of San Diego's Masters in Engineering, Sustainability, and Health. And these are 73 students, 55 of whom are women, that across ages, across disciplines, different cultural backgrounds, and they are coming together to co-define problems and co-create solutions around issues around health, around environment, around food security. And the students and the faculty and the advisory board are creating this community of practice. So it's more than just an educational program. It really is an intergenerational program that's thinking about new ways of partnering, of learning, and of knowing, really. So I've found that very powerful. And I think what it does is it leads to my next point is that it's much more now, I think sustainability is about networks and not about hierarchies. Because I think when you've got hierarchies, particularly if those lower down the hierarchy don't have the power or the confidence to speak truth to power, then you're not going to really drive change. And so, having networks doesn't mean about someone not being responsible for making decisions. It just means that design, implementation, and learning happens in a more distributed way. And I think that goes back to the point I was making earlier about social infrastructure and there being a kind of social contract here between citizens and institutions. And I think women are very good at creating those social contracts. And I think part of that, and it's needed probably more now than ever, is rebuilding trust. And that's done through having thoughtful conversations across generations and across sectors.
Thank you so much. Kanika, tell us about some of your thoughts around collaboration.
Yeah, I'm actually already so inspired just by listening to everyone because really resonate with a lot that's been said. I think two more things that have probably not been covered, which I keep in mind always, is firstly just also looking into the role of technology. I think the world is changing at such a fast pace, and especially like I think I read this in the Stanford Diversity Index AI report where it's mentioned something like if women are not producers in AI right now and just consumers, the kind of technology that we start using will continue to embed the kind of biases all technologies have always had. And then we've done like some levels of retrofitting later. So I think into when thinking of collaboration, I think I really want to also think of how collaboration happens using technology across technology. The fact that we're able to meet right now and host this is because we could collaborate using technology. And sometimes I feel when I'm in several audiences, like the role of technology is almost seen as something to hate rather than something that can turbocharge some of these collaborations. So I think that's one thing that I have like when I started my career, I actually was part of this global group, UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and it was a network, so non-hierarchical, but it helped me connect to people across 187 universities when I was studying. So this is like a decade back, but it really helped me and opened up my worldview into like what all can be done. And I do think that technology has helped in collaborating quite a lot in today's like world. So really looking into how we can leverage technology in general. And I think another thing that I always think about when thinking of technology is like currently we're actually not very advanced. Like women are probably just 20% in the AI workforce right now. So how do we start like thinking of it in terms of awareness, education, really like understanding what bits of it do we like, we dislike, etc., rather than totally like shutting it off as something that we don't want to see. So really thinking of collaboration like that. And second, around Impact Circle, the entire uh, purpose for me to build up Impact Circle like in the last year and launch it around the sidelines of UNGA was because I wanted to democratize partnerships. I have often seen this power dynamic between like global North and global South organizations, and it having lived experience, it's been like totally different working in an organization in Kenya and India versus an organization in Chicago and London. And you see those power dynamics so easily. And just because I'm based in London now, I'm almost in the, so it doesn't matter like who you are, it actually matters where you're based, but it shouldn't be that way. So really is also starting to, and I think Maya was referring to some bits of this, really starting to think of how intersectionality like really plays into collaboration, like where are the rooms in which we need to like do some levels of intentional capacity building, really like listen more rather than talk more, versus where are the rooms where we need to talk more rather than listen more, etc. So I think that's basically like two areas where I think of collaboration, like thinking intersectionality and thinking how technology can support as well, in additionality to everything that's already been said.
Thank you so much. Before we go into our third and final question, I'd just like to remind everyone, if you have any questions for our panelists, just feel free to put them in the chat and then we will get to them next. Our final question, and we'll start with Lesley-Anne for this one. What wisdom would you like to pass along to the next generation of women leaders working towards equity and sustainability?
I don't know about wisdom, Jessica, but hard-won experience maybe. So three things that I've learned from the work that I've been doing, and I've been a teacher, a barrister. I've worked in global health. I've worked in academia, and now I'm working in democracy. So one thing is, whatever you pick when you start isn't necessarily where you're going to end up. But what I've really learned is that change very rarely just comes from one big breakthrough moment. And it's usually about being thoughtful and persistent, and building connections. And that seems to be one thing that's the thread through what we've all been saying here in this webinar, is connections really can make the difference. So whether you're working with governments, with young people, with women, whoever you're working with, progress often comes through connection. And what I've found is it's often connection with unlikely groups of individuals or organizations. The people who wouldn't typically be in a room together, when you put them in a room together with a challenge to think about, they often come up with surprising ideas. Second, I would say that, and it's linked to this, there's no universal timetable for impact. You see all these Forbes and other magazines, 30 under 30, 40 under 40. I wouldn't put an age to impact. I've alluded to the fact that my career has definitely not been a straight line. And I would say most of what's really mattered to me has come after years of experience, and definitely through unexpected detours, and being open to having different kinds of conversations. And the third thing, final thing, I'd say don't ask for permission. If you see something you want to change, just go for it. Find the people, have the conversation, and make it happen.
Thank you so much. Maya, tell us about your wisdom that you'd like to pass along. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, so many of the things that Lesley-Anne just said really resonate with me also. There are a few other things that I wanted to mention. One is, my thinking is that really the current day challenges we face require very interdisciplinary thinking. And my feeling is that women are quite a better place to do this. There's quite a lot of gendered thinking on science, and I find a lot of men are still more interested in, physics and maths. whereas women have a bit more freedom. They don't have to be just about physics and maths, so they can really learn the physics and maths for sure, and the tech and everything, but also the biology and the ecology and all those other disciplines which are so critical. So I'd stress that as an important sort of aspect of sort of, I suppose, developing your knowledge. We've talked a lot about working together, and my feeling is it's so important, but it's not so easy. So try and think how to do it, how to build those relationships, those networks, that respect for everyone. We don't always have it naturally, but you do have to try and respect all sorts of people and understand what they bring to the table as well. I see a lot of, when I'm in Goa, some of these older women who now aren't respected very much. The people who used to be the, say, the traditional healers, and they know all about the plants and the trees and everything, but people are sort of seeing them as these backward people. So really understanding what everybody can bring to the table is important. But the others are, I'd say, about being ambitious, stepping up yourself, taking these opportunities when you see them. You don't have to sort of wait to be invited. And I see so many, because we're in Materia Verde also supporting, doing venture design with new businesses. And nearly all of them are actually run by women, and a lot of young women who are amazing, who just, they take really difficult challenges. They just seem to get on with it and set up some ambitious business. And then I'd say actually just being, calm and confident and patient, and being able to listen. And that does involve working on one sort of mindset as well. You're doing your yoga and your meditation, don't forget about that sort of health. You need to be healthy and resilient in order to really do good work in difficult circumstances. So those are, I think there were 3 or 4 points there, but that's I think there's so many things that women can do, and really important to be ambitious and take that lead.
Thank you. Kanika, tell us about the wisdom you'd like to pass along.
Yeah, so 10 years in, I think there have been two things that I would say stand out. One is definitely that with all the ebbs and flows in aid, with all the changing geopolitical uncertainties, everything can feel sometimes quite heavy. And I love this poem by Sheena Pago that has like the statement called "Rest if you must, but don't quit." I think that's the wisdom that I kind of follow, and I know many people around me do as well. So like, rest if you have to, but you don't have to quit. You can come back with more fuel when you feel ready to kind of pursue impact in general. And I think the second wisdom is impact. It happens when it is also funded. So also probably the second wisdom is learn more about the investment landscape, the finance landscape, what funds impact, and try to understand how capital mobilization can happen. So again, like I believe this wisdom is something that I gave myself like two years back, and I'm almost in the journey. Like last year, I was with Fair Trade Foundation, an organization which has a business model in place. So I really learned how the organization does good work, but also makes revenue at the same time. And currently I'm in an investor coalition with Climate Policy Initiative as well, really trying to, again, learn similar aspects of like, how can we invest in the right places? How can we mobilize capital in the right places? Because it really fuels impact, and the uncertainty of it sometimes stops impact as well. So really those two things are what I would say stand with me.
Thank you so much. Katie, tell us about the wisdom you'd like to pass along.
Oh, well, I absolutely loved Lesley-Anne's don't ask for permission. I think that's brilliant. And I really hope I'm bringing up my daughters with that seared into their brain. But I think for me, it's about being brave. I think having self-belief, I see over and over again when women come together in these spaces, there is a lack of self-belief and self-esteem and confidence. And, I've seen some incredibly knowledgeable, talented, insightful women who have great things to say, and they're just they don't see that about themselves. I think don't be afraid to ask for help and guidance as well. I think that's really, really important. We can't know everything and know the answers to everything. And again, it sort of feeds into that sort of collaboration. And I think also staying strong to your convictions. I think it can feel really scary sometimes, standing up for what you think is right. But I've always seen how people really respect that and respond well to it if you're doing it in a sort of an honest and open and dignified way. So yeah, those would be my pass-ons.
Thank you so much. I'm feeling so energized and excited by all the things I learned today, and just can't wait to listen to this conversation because there's just so much here. So thank you, everyone. We do have some questions from those who are attending. Eva, I know you had a couple of questions in the chat. Would you like to ask one of them? Unmute yourself and ask.
Great. Thank you very much, ladies. Super inspiring. I feel like my activism level goes up as we go through the call. So thank you so much for that. So one observation, I worked in US recently for about 6 weeks after maybe 6 months of not being there. And I really noticed the increase of anti-women rights movement, like really visible. And I was in university and a reasonably good tech company with normal people, but the level of acceptance and the level of time for change, time for pendulum to swing back. I mean, I heard so much of that it really shocked me. And we had this whole debate here when Elon Musk put up this silly AI solution to put people in bikini. And there was a lot of response in Europe from feminist movements, from prime ministers, from everybody. There was nothing from US, nothing. Everybody is so petrified. I was beyond shocked. There was, in fact, 2 women senators who said, yeah, we are for absolute freedom of speech, good guy, very positive, supporting Musk. What has happened?
Oh, who wants to answer that one?
All right, I'll give it a go as the Brit living in DC and hoping my green card won't get chopped up when I say this. But the current administration is creating fear. So Eva, you're right, people are petrified to speak out, but there is so much happening at grassroots level, quietly, thoughtfully, women mobilizing. I mentioned in the chat earlier, I'm part of a 1,300 plus women's group that started up last year. And they're just phenomenal. They're sort of mid-career to very senior professionals. And there's so much happening across the country, and it is in communities, it's in grassroots, and to a certain extent happening a little bit in some of these Lunch for Democracy conversations that I'm doing. We're in schools just in DC at the moment, but we're about to launch in about another 6 cities in the next couple of months across the US. But I think it's really tough. Like, people are afraid to speak out, the media's afraid to speak out. And so I think it's almost bringing people together for those smaller conversations and creating safe spaces to be able to speak freely and to, Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart use the phrase disagreeing agreeably. There isn't much of that, disagreeing agreeably that's happening here. And what I've really noticed, and I've been living here 13 years now, is that people go very quickly from, I don't agree with you, you're stupid, I hate you. And the gap between that is getting smaller and smaller. And so anything that can kind of break that pattern of, I don't agree with you, you're stupid, I hate you, is going to help, I think, create those kind of threads of connection and finding some common ground that feels really difficult right now. And it's not just the US. I mean, we're seeing it globally as there is more authoritarianism, there is pushback against women's rights, against advocacy groups for women. 270 million women still don't have access to contraception. In the last 2 weeks, that number's probably increased. And I can get into other data as well, but it's definitely not just the US. I feel it's very noticeable here because of the tenor of the narrative and the landscape of conversation that we've seen over the last 18 months. Sorry, that was a bit of a rant.
No, but it's a good rant. What really frightened me is that when I actually got to good conversations with people who are really sensible and good technologists, they were giving this rationale that the reason why they can't mitigate this movement because it reflects where the AI training needs to be, because AI training has to be truth, and therefore they're not going to take any conversation that changes the truth. And they're like, what truth are you talking about? Like, diminishing women is nobody's truth. It's not nobody's interest. These people who are making this AI, they have mothers, sisters, where is everybody? And he said, no, it's important to train the systems for objectivity. And I thought, like, okay, this is a bigger problem than I thought, because this is not 15-year-olds being stupid. This is not Andrew Tate. This is technologists who have found some new, revelation in the fact that the truth of the model needs to be independent, and therefore we cannot have feminism. So this is beginning of something really worrying for me.
I can jump in quickly as well. And I do think that ever since the moonshot landing of ChatGPT happened, there's so much that has changed, etc. But I do think that US in general, having the tech giants and having the monopolies in place, is taking a much more a non-neutral approach to like any things related to responsible AI and ethical AI. I do think that there's a lot more criticism in UK and European legislations for it, and there's a lot more conversations around AI safety and good rollout of technology that happens here than in US. And it has to do with the links. Like I cannot delink it with the rising authoritarianism. I cannot delink it with the rising like far right movements that are just gaining so much popularity in US. So I do think that it is proportional to all of that, and that's where these conversations of women need to be in the rooms where these decisions are being made are now more important than ever, because that's the only way these conversations can actually surface up at technological like building levels as well, and design levels, and conversations related to like better guides in place for it as well. So extremely concerning what Grok was up to either way, but hoping that other tech platforms do not go through the same route.
Yeah, I agree.
I just come in here briefly. And my feeling is that women also have to be encouraged to be producers of that information, which AI is then sort of sifting and then giving to you. And it seems that women, I mean, I can't remember the figures, but they don't publish quite as much as men in, there are a lot of men blogging, men, all sorts of writing more books, etc. But women really have to step up, have to now start ensuring that there is that material on the internet, because otherwise the truth is, what the truth in AI terms is what is there on the internet, isn't there? What is there that's published?
Yeah, the truth is the frequency. So like I look at
Yeah.
Substack. Substack has got only 20% women writers, and Substack is what feeds a lot of these models. Wikipedia is a bit better, but still there is a big imbalance.
So I think we should all commit to publishing on Substack if we're not doing it already.
Good call.
Thank you so much. That was a great question and opened up a lot of conversation that I think we can continue to talk about and try to figure out, because it's so important. I'd like to pass it back over to Claire, but first I just want to thank again our panel for sharing your experience and your wisdom with us today. I'm so inspired, and I'm so grateful that you took the time to be with us here today. So, Claire, do you want to start wrapping us up?
Oh, I will do my best. It's been so lovely hearing from all of you, and also just such a treat for me to be able to kind of take a back seat and listen a little bit more, which I don't often get to do in these wonderful conversations. So thank you for bringing your energy, your wisdom. Yes, Lesley-Anne, we all have lots of wisdom, regardless of our age or where we're at in our life or careers. And you've all held so many different roles and your life experiences. I just really appreciate you sharing those with us. There's lots of different things coming in the chat that both Tony and I have been trying to capture, and we will follow up with everybody who's registered with both the recording of the event, various different books that have been recommended. I think we need to set up a book club basically and try and like keep each other accountable for all of these wonderful reads. But just to let you know, and we're mindful of time, I think Tony, I know there was a slide with a couple of things kind of coming up that we wanted to share with you all. Oh, she's on it. Look at that. Always way ahead of me. A couple of different events that the Gender Equity Network are running, and both Jessica, Aviva, and Dr. Rashida Watts co-lead and co-design our event programming for the Gender Equity Network. So thank you both so much for all you do. Dr. Rashida is running a 3-part series from invisibility to visibility, essentially. And they're like kind of women's circles, very informal gatherings. And there's going to be 3 over the course of the month of April, from Pitch, Connect, Rise, the first one, to confidence, advocacy, and power, and then from visibility to opportunity. So those are coming up. Please do join us. We'll pop links in the chat, and we'll also send follow-up email. And then I'm doing this as fast as I can, so I'm mindful of everyone's time. We also have a wonderful event with Melissa Wong, who is a fellow in the US and also our Portland ambassador, on the relational career, which I think could be really interesting for some folks here, and some of the things that have come up, building powerful relations and relationships in that kind of the non-transactional traditional way of networking and building out your career support system. We are running a town hall for our US fellowship community on April 8th. We're super excited about this. We invite you all to come co-design, reimagine the future fellowship with us, really participatory and really collaborative. And then our next connection session is May 6th. And thanks to Tony for being so on it in the chat there. Take a deep breath. That's a lot. We have a lot going on as usual. But we are just excited to keep the conversation going with you all here. Don't be a stranger. You can drop me an email at claire.byrne@thersa.org. You can drop Tony an email at tony.shoala@thersa.org to chat about our social connections programming and work. If you want to deep dive on that and get super nerdy, Tony is your person. And we have lots going on there in that space. And I'm going to pop our website as well in the chat if you want to learn more about either becoming a fellow or getting started on Circle. So that was lots of different links and like loads of information just as we're wrapping up. But I wanted to thank you all so much for joining us today, to our speakers, for sharing your lived experiences, professional experiences, energy, insights, and wisdoms. And for those of you who attended with us today, for spending the past 60 minutes with us. We greatly appreciate your time. So have a wonderful rest of your morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you are in the world. And hopefully we will see you all soon.